All right. Well, welcome to another challenge here for you guys. This is called the 100 of Something Challenge, and it's all about using repetition to make something feel like it has some sense of unity to it, something that kind of makes everything feel like everything belongs together. And when that happens in the art world and other parts of society, um, we talk about it having the Gestalt principle. And Gestalt principle comes from German philosophers who were studying the way people thought about things or understood things. And in describing what they believed, they came up with that term. So it's a unified whole. And a good way of thinking it in short is that what we want in a good sculpture or in a good understanding of something is that the whole, what we think about that thing or what we see when we look at a sculpture, is greater than the sum of its parts. So we don't have like a lots of little pieces of information about a person, but we know them as a whole person, or we aren't focused on only a few parts of this sculpture that we're looking at, but that it all feels like everything belongs and everything should be there. So, an example I often use to explain that is which of these images makes you think more of the term car, right? The parts are all there in the lower left-hand corner, but they aren't put together. And therefore, it looks like a whole bunch of things that don't necessarily belong together in a way. Now, we can figure it out because we've seen a car before. Um, but you might already be looking at it and say, oh, there are the wheels, there's the red parts, and those are the small parts, and those are the bigger parts, and start to separate it out in your mind, grouping different things together. Whereas the picture on the right, we say, oh, that's a car. What kind of car is it? Is it a Honda? Is it a Ford? Is it a Audi? And we start to ask questions about it, not like why are the wheels there, or what are the blue parts of the car, but we see it all connected as one, in part because we know what cars are, but also in part because everything's been put in the right spot. So, why should you care about this? Well, as an artist, we want to make things that are readily available to other people. That when they look at it the same way we just looked at the car, they understand it in an instant and then can start moving forward with their perceptions about it. Like, do I like it? Is it cool? Those kinds of questions. And if they're still trying to figure out what they're looking at, then they tend not to get to those other questions, which makes it harder for us to do things like communicate with other people through our art. So there's a lot there about a philosopher and a poet and that sort of thing, but we'll move on here. The next question you might say is, so to be a good artist or to make good art, I need a grouping strategy, some way to make everything feel like it belongs together. And yeah, you do. Now, there's no unbreakable rule in art, right? You can make good art without following really a set of rules. However, you make it a lot easier on yourself if you do. And if we do follow a grouping strategy, we could create a sense of unity, another word for gestalt, or something that we could refer to as a unified whole. So, what are some of those grouping strategies? Well, there's tons of them, right? So, I'll only go over a few. But visually, if you create contrast in something, you would maybe think that that would not create unity. And it can, break things apart, but it can also make it easier to figure out what something is by seeing how it changes. A rough texture and a smooth texture lets us know that that artist is interested in texture. So differences can be a good thing. Repetition is what we're going to use for this project, or I hope you're going to use for this project. And you can imagine that when you take a lot of small things that have something in common and put them together, that it's easier to see what the larger whole is. Where we place things is also something you'll have to think about, or how you put things together, and that would be where things are in proximity to other things. And of course, if something resembles something, then it's very easy to see it as a whole. Like you stop looking at it as pieces, just like with the car, and you say, okay, those are the eyes on the head. so forth. To extend this thinking just a little bit further, maybe not something we need to do for making our sculpture, but maybe just in terms of our thinking. There are conceptual grouping strategies as well. Classification, so trying to find similarities there. Analysis, classifying parts of a structure like the eyes on a head. Or analogizing, and that's always a hard one for me to say, but finding a common link between things that are dissimilar, which might go back to that contrast idea, that if we can see what something is not, then we kind of know more about what it is in a way. Just like we know when things are good because there are things that are bad, um, but also the way a poet might allude to the sky without telling us exactly what that person is seeing in the sky. So, what do you have to do? For this one, you got to use repetition. And I want you to gather something that you can find around the house or you can buy that you could have a great number of. I say 100, but there's no hard and fast rule that it has to be 100. But, more than 5, right? And we're going to look at that and think about the attributes of those things, what makes them what they are, and then try to put them together in an interesting configuration. Some things that you might want to think about: you're using repetition, so that's going to make everything feel like it belongs together. But how are you putting these things together? Are you going to glue them? Are you going to tie them? Are you simply going to arrange them? Um, think about how you're going to photograph this thing. If you take a picture of it and it's got a really busy background, I might not be able to see all the hard work that you've done. So you want to think about lighting, color, um, and where you're going to take a picture of this thing. Um, well, the last thing to think about is, enjoying it. This shouldn't look like work. It should look more like a fun thing. So some examples. Here's pasta glued together to make a larger star-like shape. So this person is thinking about how they would fit these things together. Craftsmanship could be a little bit better here. I see a lot of glue there, but I love all these circles building up to make these larger conical forms. Oh, click on the right spot, Mr. Wolfen. Here's an old book that's been disassembled, rolled up, and reassembled and hung. I like that. Toothpicks, they're pointy. Ouch, I don't want to touch them, but I can make a star out of them using just a simple gluing and cross in the middle. They created a whole kind of wonderful, reminds me of snowflakes. Peas here. And here's popsicle sticks. They're geometric, all right? So you make a stack of 4 of them, it's okay, but make a stack of 40 or 400, and boom, look what you can start to get with the repetition of the little pieces, but also the forms that they create. So there's your challenge, guys. We are looking for something with a lot of repetition. Um, I can't wait to see what you can come up with.